Access granted.
Hello and welcome to the Full Force Redacted, brought to you by GeneralsJoesReborn.com with me, Christopher McLeod, aka Diagnostic 80. On the show today, I am joined by the awesome Brian Flynn to chat about the brand new G.I. Joe Reaction Plus line and Ultimates updates. Brian, thank you so much for spending the time to do this with me yet again. How are you doing?
It's been good. It's been so long. I forgot your voice. You know?
I never call you anymore. It's like I don't care about you anymore. What's going on?
It wounds me right here. I can feel it.
Well,
my Instagram, he doesn't talk to me anymore.
That isn't true. I've slid into your DMs a few times recently. It's just been crazy, and I think it's been crazy on your end as well. Quite, you've been very busy.
Yes.
We've got lots of great, cool stuff to talk about. I mean, it's been a while, but we've got some good stuff to talk about. We're going to talk Reaction Plus. We're going to talk Ultimates that have dropped kind of in between the last time we spoke and now, which is about 500 figures.
Some sprankles. We sprankled a few in.
Got some sprankles to talk about. We've got lots to get into. So I guess we'll start with the Reaction Plus line, because that is obviously something that has kind of hit recently, fairly recent. We're a little late to the party, as we kind of is basically our
September.
MO nowadays.
It's the end of November, and it's cool.
It's been like 6 months or whatever. No, Reaction Plus, it's out now. I say plus with an O around it. It's O plus. It's out now and in stores and sort of on your website, but also sold out to some degree as well, which is amazing. There you go.
Backwards.
Branding. There you go. Even Cobra knew about branding. How
the
good?
O for the O-ring and the plus for the screw in the back.
Perfect. I love that. Let's talk then, because obviously we had a little conversation about this before. But you revealed this to be happening at Joe Fest.
Yes.
And first off, I've got to say, I'm very impressed that not only did the line come out right on the money from when you said it was going to be coming out, but that it was also like in stores, like straight away, and it was like accessible, and everyone seemed to be picking it up, and it appears to have done really well on the surface. How happy have you been with that kind of response?
No, it's been really good. Obviously, going into Joe Fest and then San Diego and all that, we knew, where the launch was, so everything was predicated around the launch, and then sort of working backwards from there. I'm glad it appeared to be like, hey, you guys made this and it showed up on time, which is a backhanded, but
it is a backhanded compliment. It's actually,
but it's appropriate. I'm not going to deny that.
I wouldn't say that. It's more about, and this is where I'm going to dig a massive hole here. It's more about the industry as a whole and how difficult it is in the industry to hit deadlines that are laid out early on.
So, well, if we want to reveal, if we want to peel back some of the luster on it, the reality is by the time we went to Joe Fest, I actually had painted samples, but I couldn't show them to you.
Right. That's great.
I can show you unpainted blue, even though I know I'm further along.
Right. So it's all smoke and mirrors, isn't it? It's all just smoke and mirrors.
It's how we had. If you remember at San Diego, we had the blue figures, but they had card backs.
Yeah.
But those were actual card backs.
They were the actual production card backs. Amazing.
Actual production card backs.
Oh, I also need to say thank you very much as well for giving us the kind of like heads up on that before they went out and allowing us to kind of like post those images first. I really appreciate that. Pat mentioned that, you kind of grabbed him and kind of said, well, you can send these to Chris, but Chris can post them. But I appreciate that very much. How was that? I mean, how did the fans react to those kind of samples at Joe Fest?
People seem to be very excited. I mean, obviously you're in the fishbowl at that point with everybody that's what they're looking for.
You're in the echo chamber. Yeah.
And people have been asking for it for a while, and people just wanted to see them. And then once they saw them, they were, it wasn't one of those things where there was immense amount of conversation about it. They were like,
right.
Yeah, those look good. I'm going to get those. Cool. Hold on. Let me take a picture with my phone, send it to my friend. One more picture from this side. And then these look great. And then they leave. And then come back an hour later. Can I take a picture of the back? I need a detail of the foot. It's like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But I think, if you oversimplify it, maybe the response was just that people were like, yes.
Yeah.
Like not a lot of push, not a lot of critique, not a lot of feedback. Like these look and feel correct. Oh,
yeah.
This is what for a lot of people, this is what I've been waiting for.
Yeah.
I appreciate or some people don't, but I appreciate what the reaction figures are, but that's not what I want. I wanted this. So now that I'm getting this, I'm excited.
Yeah, so there was a bit of satisfaction there from the fans, I guess, from that side of things, and from you, I guess, because you've wanted to do this for a long time, haven't you? Really?
Well, obviously, when we first got out there, we first talked to Hasbro about it. That was our first thing. Was like, oh, here's our whole plan for O-Ring, and they're like, we make O-Ring, you guys don't. Would you like? What would you like to make? And it's like, all right, well, the next best thing for G.I. Joe is making reaction figures, and obviously we did that for a long time. And we were very lucky to be able to use that to prove to them that we knew what to do and how to handle the G.I. Joe brand accordingly. That allowed us the opportunity to come in and make these guys.
And you did a lot of reaction figures, and still are.
There's still reaction figures. We're not giving up the ghost.
A couple that dropped in the time that we last spoke were the Glenda and Cobra Mortal, which were nice touches again, nice little international touches. And we'll talk again about Mortal later on when we talk Ultimates. But coming back to the Reaction Plus, are we calling it Plus, or are we calling it O Plus?
No, Reaction Plus is what I'm.
Reaction Plus is cool. Okay, I wasn't sure if there was another, like an in-house.
It's O positive because that's your blood type. No, it's
like that.
It's Reaction Plus.
Reaction O positive is a really good one. Because obviously they're O-ring figures, right? So with the complexity of those figures and the design and build and everything, how difficult was that development and production process for the line? Because, like you said, you had like figures in hand around Joe Fest, painted samples at least. But how was that a difficult process because of the complexity of the design?
There was a lot more work. We've been working on it for a while. It's not, it is more complex. Was it, abhorrently complex? I think the bigger issues and complexity are ones we've talked about in the past, which is which era of figures are you going to look at for your inspiration? Like, how are you, we're kind of leaning back into sort of the first few years, but we're going to make sure it's got, the Kung Fu grip, but the swivel arm, how are you handling the rivets? Are they anodized or painted, or are they silver? How are you handling sort of the level of sculpt detail? Ironically, probably the hardest thing that we struggled with in trying to make them as accurate to the old toys as possible was the hook that comes out of the waist in the old figures is bent, but the kind of O-ring that you used worked. Like, so we replicated that exactly, but then when we put a brand new O-ring in there, it twists the waist like 20 degrees.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Because it's just sort of I don't know why a different circle factors differently, but like if you even look at some of those blue ones on display, like the hips are a little, so we had to go in and tweak, that a little bit.
Was that a matter of hollowing out the interior to make the O-ring kind of like move around in there, or was
it was more just like the angle at which it's connected to the crossbar.
I see.
The stuff like that, and.
It's funny how many things you probably don't think about initially that then come up in the production process, right?
Yeah, you were like, well, this is how it was made. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not working.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then how do we make it work? So more than actually getting into the, weeds of engineering it, like we know how to make toys at this point.
Of course, yeah.
So it was more making sure that it felt right when you got it in your hand.
Right.
And nailing that. And, like I said, I think as we discussed before, the longest and biggest conversation was just about the rivets. And I'm like, and ultimately I'm the one, not that other people didn't disagree. It was 50-50, but it was like silver, just to me, when you see it, it's not trying to improve upon it. It's like, no, this is the way I came out.
Right.
And I feel like the silver rivets more directly give you that sense of nostalgia than the painted rivets do.
How many passes do you think happened before you got that feeling where you had the figure in hand and you were like, oh, this is the right weight, it feels right? I mean, how many kind of like levels are we talking like in the production process there?
It was a little bit further back from that, of just like what level of how much level of detail, what level of paint, because as you start the first figures, they're pretty rough. And, they get more and more and more complicated within the same run.
Right.
Same thing. How much level of paint do you put on this figure before it starts to get to the far side? And there's always that part where what you remember and what it was aren't always the same thing. Like you'll remember that first year figure being really cool and lots of paint, and then if you really go look at it, you're like, no, there's 4 paint hits on this.
It's like one in one case.
Exactly. So you have to be able to also then find, sort of divine, if you will, what that right level of, well, I have different expectations now,
right
but my memory tells me it's this. So yes, that's not technically accurate. Like, Cobra Commander did not have all that paint on the belt back then.
Right.
But you wouldn't not have that today.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like if I do that now, you're like, oh, that's exactly the way it was back then.
Right. It's like kind of subtle updates that are kind of like Mandela affected in the brain already, sort of thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
So in terms of the figures look great, by the way, and the ones that you have in hand. In terms of those characters, let's talk that a little bit, because I'm always really interested in how you guys come about what to actually choose for like that first wave. So in regards to that process of the character choices, like, what sort of factors were you taking into consideration here? Because I know we've talked about, you need to have some sort of main characters, really. Right. And obviously that's when you're talking Cobra Commander and Snake Eyes, there aren't many that haven't already been done. So that must have been quite difficult. So what was going through the mind there with those choices?
Yeah, it was still, obviously, if you're going to put the first wave out on Peg and there's not a Cobra Commander,
right,
and there's not a Snake Eyes, like,
what are you doing?
You guys even know who G.I. Joe is? You're like, well, here's our first wave of Masters of the Universe, but we're not making Skeletor and He-Man.
No He-Man, no Skeletor.
What are you guys doing? Like,
Fearless Photog is the only one we're starting with.
Yeah, there you go. I can't remember the official name of the contest, but it was the kids drawing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so how do I? Sorry, I keep trying to see you, but also put something.
It's all good, man.
But you want to make a G.I. Joe, you want to make a Cobra Commander O-ring, but I don't want to make one that you already have.
Exactly, yeah.
So what do I do? It's you're threading the needle a little bit with both him and with Snake Eyes.
So in the case of Cobra Commander, I'm assuming it's the Sunbow colors and it's the new head sculpt to kind of like bring it a little bit closer to that cartoon look, right?
And quite honestly,
and the stripe,
the first one with the silver stripe on the helmet, like it's mind-boggling. You look at it, you're like, why does he never have?
Right,
like, it's just a stripe of paint.
I'll tell you why, because that was the costed out probably at Deco, wasn't it? It's probably that one
very
thing.
Possibly.
Yeah. But no, so that's because obviously we've had that conversation in the past of you don't want to do reissues, you don't want to do figures that you can already kind of obtain. So to give it that slight difference is enough for you guys to kind of like get that. Do you know what I mean?
Like, we need to have a Cobra Commander. So what is that thing that you've never been able to get, and you've never been able to get, a vintage style O-ring with the paint down the helmet and the sort of, then you get into slightly updated colors and a little bit different in the sculpt and things like that. But
that's great. And then of course Snake Eyes. That was an interesting one with Snake Eyes, because a lot of people weren't necessarily not familiar, but they weren't sure what the homage was. And I'm assuming it was the blue used in like kind of like the the comics in
Yes.
certain panels.
Well, I
and
mean,
stuff like
with that visor, it's comics.
yeah.
So yeah, completely. This is the comic book version, and so that was part of it too. Is like we want to look at all those iterations, which we've done in Reaction Plus, but it's
Of course,
okay,
yeah.
I mean, in Reaction, but in Reaction Plus, where it's like it's the cartoon, it's the comic book, it is all these other places that G.I. Joe lived that the characters, don't look exactly like at this time.
Right. Yeah. So Snake Eyes, Cobra Commander, check. Main characters sorted. What I really loved in that first wave was the fact that you did the bat that you've done in Ultimates as well. This
comic book bat
is beautiful. And what I really love as well, the fact you did the new head sculpt as well to kind of, be closer to that comic version. And it just looks amazing. And both arms being able to be used for the pieces. Very, very cool indeed.
Yeah, and then obviously it's not the helmet's the easy place, but like those I got to get in front of the camera.
It was beautiful.
Like he's got completely different arms, from the elbow down. So it's getting that, and just
the
bat is just one of those characters that everybody loves, and they love to army build with. He's a phenomenal character, and there's some really cool stuff that hasn't been done with the bat. And so we're like, same thing. Like, how do we make it so when people come out, they're like, yes. So, bat, if you will, to me, that's a level A figure.
Yeah, big time.
So then I'm like, okay, I got 3 bangers, and then I was like, and then what's the thing that you have no idea?
Never.
I'm gonna get them. It's like I try to usually have a good bit of bangers, and then one that's really sort of not completely left field, but just really unexpected.
Yeah.
And surprising, because if you only make the A's, you need to make the B's and the C's. And
totally.
Not that she's any of those things, and not that I want to relate any of those letters to a female figure.
Yeah.
And then it's like
cover
blonde
girl.
Cover girl. You never got a blonde cover girl. So let's bring CoverGirl out, and
this was a good choice, for the
and it's one of those, like I said, very unexpected. I think,
to a degree.
But that's to me, this is the part that really makes the line exciting. With it, if it's just these all day long, it's fun and it's cool,
right?
But I know exactly what I'm going to get when this stuff shows up. You're like, oh man, I didn't know I needed that,
and it's something.
Something
fresh in that vintage line as well, that in that kind of design and style. Yeah, really enjoyed that as a first wave, really solid. And then on top of that, you go and bust out the 2-pack, Tomax and Zaymot, and the packaging. Dude, the packaging is so beautiful on this one. So was it really important for you guys to make sure you really grasp that vintage packaging style?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like when the twins originally came out and everybody got that mirror package, and it was so cool, and it was so crazy.
Cool. So
and
cool.
Everybody ripped them open. Nobody kept it sealed.
No one kept the packaging. Yeah.
No one kept the packaging. You want to buy, I can tell you how much a loose package costs because we bought one to re-engineer it. But it's like, unless you want to go spend several $100s on a beat up loose package, you're not going to get that package again. So when we started talking about the twins and saying like, all right, what's the version of the twins you haven't got? I mean, there's a version that came much later, but not a true sort of old school O-ring one. We're like,
right.
But you have to, this is the package that you sell the twins in,
absolutely,
not on card.
Absolutely.
And I think for a lot of people too, that the packaging for these guys is as much the draw as the figures themselves.
Oh, 100. But I will also say that it's the first proper O-ring suited Tomax and Zaymot we have had, like you say, I think like the club covered it a little bit back in the day, but like in terms of like an actual newly sculpted, like correct to the Sunbow cartoon and all that kind of stuff. Spot on, absolutely spot on. The figures look great as well, and the fact they come with little their suits inside the briefcase as well was a really good touch. Again, these decisions, is this one of those things who's coming up with these ideas to kind of throw these in there with them? Is this from you, or is this from like?
I mean, we all work on it together.
Yeah.
Obviously, myself, Mike, Josh, Kyle, we all talk about all this stuff. It's not to say that other people on the team don't as well. And, you know, we all just kind of go back and forth. It's like, what's the best idea? What's the coolest way we could bring this together? And so usually it's more like we start and we kind of build all the way up in here and we get too much stuff. And then you start cutting it back down.
Yeah.
And like, what are the best things that rise to the top?
Yeah.
When you get into some of the decisions, you know, usually on how the line lists come together, like what's in wave 1, what's in wave 2, what's in wave 3, that's a little bit more usually for me than we all still talk about it as a team, but that really comes also back down to, then I have to start really talking about some of our retailers, what their timelines are, when are we bringing some, what are the events. So really what happens is we start really putting together our wish list of all the figures we want to make.
Right.
And we kind of roughly group them. But then we sit down and we're like, look at the calendar. All right, what's happening? Well, we know
what
what's happening
makes sense.
in San Diego, what's happening here, what's happening here. So, all right, well, what stuff fits there? Well, if that stuff is best, if the best place to drop that figure is here, that means the tooling for that one has to come out in a prior wave or, you know, or whatever. And then you start, you know, sort of moving the pieces around till you can get to sort of the best.
You're like chiseling away at everything until you come up with that final like statue.
It's like, you know, you start to put together a puzzle. You start with all the first, and then you're like, all right, well, where's the face? I can make it. And then I'm going to make it, you know, and you slowly piece it all together.
Yeah.
It's that same way. Because I mean, you know, as soon as you start talking about it, it's like, we can make this and this and this and this.
Right. It just goes nuts, doesn't it?
Yeah. You just, all the things you've ever wanted to do. It's a vomit of ideas.
And the other thing, the fact that you guys have so many lines, so many original IP, licensed IP, whatever, so much stuff coming out on a regular basis, you must be having to cover. I mean, you must be running all over the place with these things, like trying to get everything lined up and organized. And it must be a logistical nightmare, not just with G.I. Joe, but with Thundercats and all the other lines and everything that you're dealing with.
Yeah, but like just like you plan out, what you do is you plan out. For me, you know, we plan it out by license or form factor, and then you start stacking them on top, and then you look at it and you go, are we too weighted in one place or another? And then you try to slide it around till it all becomes sort of like, you know, as even as you can.
I'm just imagining a giant abacus at SUPER7.
Look, actually, it's funny, but if you go back, probably, I would say we've been in this office now for 7 years. So up to 6 years ago, what I had was there's a giant wall in the other room that's probably 40 feet long.
Right.
And there was a 30-foot long giant piece of paper that we gridded out. Wow. And literally it was month and either form factor or license. And we had Post-it notes, and I would write what it was. And you could do here. So if I needed something needed to move, I could just pick it up and move it to where it needed to go.
Nice.
And it was at any one time you could come here and be like, this is everything we're making in the next year.
Wow.
And then every quarter we just basically cut off 3 months of it, slide it down, and add 3 months at the end.
That's brilliant.
But you could see the whole year all at once, and that was really important. And then it really got ridiculous where it was like certain, you know, like a yellow Post-it note was a new tool, a blue Post-it note was a repaint of an existing tool. So you can also then look and see like how much effort is any given time being.
My goodness.
Obviously, at that point we also then was like, this needs to be done online where everyone
electronically,
not some Post-it notes at the office. So
that's funny though. That's so cool. So you've mentioned in the past that you won't be doing any kind of reissues. We kind of talked about that a little bit as well already. That kind of already exist in O-ring form. But would you guys ever consider doing figures that are really rare in that particular vintage form? Because I wonder if people have mentioned that in the comments.
We've already we went down there a little bit, and then we actually kind of already killed that a little bit, which was it came up to, you know, talking about we've done Cobra Mortal. You know, or Mortal. As
Mortal, as
Mortal.
I like. Yeah.
Oh, Cobra Mortal.
It sounds sexier.
Oh. You have defied me for the last time.
Sounds like Zorro, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, we've done it in Reaction, and we've done it in Ultimates. And then we're like, oh, we could totally do it in O-Ring. But I'm like, but it kind of kills what's so special about that original O-Ring one. Like the ones I'm making right now cannot be confused with that or are not a replacement for that.
Right.
So we were actually talking about that, and we had it on the calendar very briefly, and then we were like, no, let's pull that for now. You know, it's not to say that we may not eventually come back around to it, but at least in my mind right now, that's not a place I want to go with that stuff, because there's so much other cool stuff that hasn't been made.
Right.
And if you have a Cobra Mortal, it's special.
Right.
There's nothing like it. And I as a collector, you appreciate those unique special things. So I'm not one to want to go in there right away and kind of jump into like, oh, that's $1,000 figure. Now you can get it for $20. No, let's not do that.
No, that's fair enough. I think I was more concerned about the Palatoy stuff getting done, honestly. You guys have been known for bringing in new aspects to the lines as well, including Joe. I'm gonna like Glow Patrol, Tiger Force editions spring to mind. Will we be seeing new ideas brought into Reaction Plus in the future, or will you have your hands full with getting characters and versions of characters that have had appearances in Joe Media as it is?
You know, the line plan as a whole, for the most part, you know, when we're really talking about like what you're gonna, like the true waves, if you will, the stuff that's gonna hit the shelves at a Target or whatever, I think you're gonna see that to be really core characters. You know, what's it there? I think when the opportunity presents itself to have more fun and be outside the normal, if you will, then that's a good place for stuff like that. So,
kind of exclusives and
where it's a non-necessary item. Because I'll play devil's advocate. If I said, here's the new wave of G.I. Joe going to Target, and it is character A that you've been wanting forever, character B that you've ever wanted, and then Glow Patrol repaints, would you just be like, I think a lot of people will be like, what the is that? Like, I don't know what that like, where's the regular guys? Don't give me, you know. Where if it happens at a convention or an exclusive or a special day or any number of other things, like, oh, that's fun, and I don't need it. But I think there's a certain sort of level of like seriousness, you know,
when it comes to the waves and everything.
We're on peg at Toy Store here.
Yeah.
This is the line.
Do you have, I mean, is there an element of not pressure, but sort of like a dialogue with stores as well that are going to be selling this stuff? I mean, do you have that sort of like, you know, because they're going to want to buy it, I guess, but they're going to want to know what it is. There's an element of selling it to them, I guess.
Yeah. But at the same time, we've got a pretty good relationship with most of those places where, you know, obviously if it doesn't sell, then you don't get the space back.
Right.
You know, so it's almost, it's sort of a half and half, which is half of it is I'm trusting that you guys have assorted this correctly. Or in some cases, the buyer is very educated and they do know. They're like, oh, I love that character, I don't know. This character has traditionally sold well for us. This character has traditionally not sold well for us.
Right.
You know, you've got to, you know, balance the wave so that people are excited about everything as much as you can.
Right. Not to get too G14 classified in here, but it's they seem to have done really well. Like sold out for the most part on the website, which is that's always great to see. Let's so Reaction Plus, congratulations.
Thank you.
Very, very happy that it's out now. You can I suppose you can reveal the next wave, right?
No.
Okay, fine.
I think
just look at the leak listings.
I think the next wave shows up in February.
Okay. Well, that's great. Brilliant. Reaction Plus. Awesome. Let's talk Ultimates as well.
nuts.
You guys have been dropping some really cool international homage and cheeky version 2 repaint as well. We'll start with Storm Shadow because I really love the idea of putting that figure in that deco as like an homage to the V2 figure, and also in that sort of like what if he was in the Sunbow cartoon sort of thing. But what made you guys decide on that specific repaint for that Storm Shadow Ultimates, considering you've got like a million options going on with that Storm Shadow?
There are. That one is specific to Big Bad Toy Store, so it's an exclusive to Big Bad. So head on over now to Big Bad Toy Store and pick up your Storm Shadow right now.
Link in the description.
And link in the description. And we worked with Big Bad Toy Store to kind of like, here's all the options. What do you guys really want?
Oh, nice. Okay, cool.
And the owner of Big Bad, he was like, oh, Storm Shadow. I love Storm Shadow.
Brilliant.
So we're like, cool. Then we'll do that one. So
fantastic.
Yeah, we proposed a couple different versions for him, and he chose Storm Shadow.
Can you show us the other versions that were proposed? Just kidding.
Not yet.
But the possibility that they might show up at some point in the future is also that. Well, I was just going to say yes. Talking about the Cobra Mortal link there, was there also could you at least maybe insinuate that there was a possible South American Storm Shadow kind of vibe going on and some of those other options? Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I mean that's pretty obvious, isn't it? Anyway, I will also say, well, it's a beautiful figure. I love the deco. The Tetris deco, as I like to call it, but that kind of like digital camo. Was there a thought at any point to try and do some like different sculpt elements for him to kind of like make him more like the figure? I mean, was that something, or was it just a case of when you're offering an exclusive? That all comes back down to timing and quantities and everything else like that. And for what this was for Joel's anniversary, it was a pretty quick turn. So we were not able to, do new toolings or anything else like that. But I don't think it really takes away from that figure that much, though. No, it's beautiful. It's really, really cool. Now, massive thank you for yet another Palatoy homage in Red Laser. He is awesome. I love the fact this is really cool because I love the fact you gave him a new head sculpt, or what I can assume is new head sculpt, because I can see like sculpt detail in the eyes and that like ridge on the top. It's absolutely awesome. And it really does enough, in my opinion, to kind of like, I mean, was that to differentiate him from Cobra Commander, or? Well, I mean, it's Cobra Commander, but it's not Cobra Commander, right? Because in the past you've done Red Jackal, but I think it was Destro, but AKA Red Jackal, right? The vintage one is Destro as Red. They just tampered. Eventually, there's no different in sculpt. We had to sculpt a new head if you're going to make Red Laser. I mean, I appreciate it. It's always funny because when we do those stuff, the people that grew up on it, because there are so many people that collect G.I. Joe, love G.I. Joe, and but they're buying the American versions, right? Right. So like when we made the Cobra Mortal, I've got some friends from Argentina and they lost their minds. Yeah. They were just like, it was the same thing like, I can't believe you love me, kind of thing. Like, you see us, and they're like, everybody here has to have one, like that's great. Their history in G.I. Joe never gets recognized. Right. So same thing, like if growing up on Palatoy, you're like, well, they're never going to make the Palatoy characters over here because that was what we had, and it's not really G.I. Joe core. And it's like, no, it is G.I. Joe core. It just hasn't had its moment to shine yet. Yeah. No, I agree, and that's awesome. I'm like, it's just nice to see these homages kind of coming through and coming out and everything, and it's really really cool to see it in Ultimates form as well, because those figures are phenomenal. And I mean, I've had Destro, the Red Jackal Destro, and the Red Knock Baroness, and they are just absolutely phenomenal. So like, the fact that we've got multiple Palatoy homages, we've got the escape armor, we've got all of that kind of stuff, and then that just makes me feel like, wow, what have we got maybe to come in the future? And I'm thinking obviously along the lines of kind of like Reaction Plus now, like are we likely to see, because as we've mentioned before,
because what you're asking me is basically the Palatoys are still, a lot of those are 5 POA. Will we see the 5 POA translated to O-ring?
Exactly. Are we going to see that in Reaction Plus, or is that something that might be a little bit too much of a niche stretch?
It's not that it's too much of a niche stretch. I think it's just we're not there right now.
Right.
You know, like there's definitely a couple, like, you know, I think we've talked many times, you know, Mouton is my favorite because that helmet with the clear green and all that stuff, he's so cool.
This
that guy
as well, Kraken, Skeletron, all of these guys.
Yeah, you got to have the net with him.
I mean, there's a
well,
bunch.
Skeletron's been done. Skeletron's been done. Those guys are taking care of Skeletron.
Technically, yeah. I guess what you're saying. Yeah. True. True.
You know, that's been handled.
I mean, I'm with those guys too, so it's cool.
Yeah. No, but you know, those guys have really done a great job with it, and they're really enthusiastic. And yeah, it's just one more really cool thing that's been brought into the modern world of toy collecting.
But Kraken.
We've talked about Kraken. Every time I see Kraken, I see weird Tales of the Future.
Right, exactly. I'm flashing it up on screen.
You'll flash the comic cover?
I'll flash the comic cover up on there. Kraken and Mouton. So we can expect those two in the next wave.
Yeah, next week, Kraken and Mouton. Sure.
Sweet. Get the marketing team on it. Get them to post some pictures. Done. No, that's wicked, man. And like I said, I'm just really excited to see Palatoy homaged in any way, shape, or form. So to see you guys, or to have seen you guys do so many kind of Palatoy homages so far, it's just been awesome. And like, I love seeing like the South American stuff. I love seeing the Fun School stuff, whether it's from Russia or India. I love seeing all those different, like, you know, kind of takes on figures and, you know, kind of reinventing them a little bit or just bringing them out again. So the more the merrier, I say, with that stuff. Yeah,
it is. I'm obviously super into all that stuff because it just makes the world of G.I. Joe so much bigger.
Right.
But there's definitely a lot of people are like, nah, that's the stuff I don't like. You know, I'm like,
yeah, well,
that's why, you know, we pick and choose.
You're always going to get that. You're always going to get that, unfortunately. Well, anyway, Brian, thank you so much, mate, for jumping on and chatting with me again. It's always a pleasure. And yeah, I mean, is there anything? Is there anything you want to add? Is there anything you want to say or drop or reveal?
Yeah, say, drop, reveal. It wouldn't be
accidentally
nice if I could actually tell you exactly when these.
Oh yeah, good idea. Good point.
Next.
That's cool.
O-ring are coming out. It's somewhere between February and April.
Somewhere between Feb and April.
You can while I'm saying it's February, you can go wait till the end. He corrects this. Somewhere between February and April, because I know we have to get it there early. You know, there's always with the calendars. It depends on which retailer you're talking about and where it is, so it can get all squirrely.
Not a problem. No, that's great. Well, thank you very much, man, for jumping on. It's been an absolute pleasure. Congratulations on the Reaction Plus line. It's just awesome. Really happy with it, and can't wait to see what you guys have coming as well. Yeah, I mean, you've got to have you back on again, of course. I mean, you're part of the furniture now, really, aren't you?
Well, you know, I'm the old chair that you don't really like sitting in. There you go.
That's not true. You're the comfy chair that I'm always in.
What are you saying? Yeah, all right. Here. All right.
I can't win. I could say you're a regular and it's going to be bad. I can say that you're.
I'm going to find something.
Yeah, exactly. You're just like the fans at the end of the day, aren't you?
No.
Find something to complain about. Only joking. All right. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. And of course, you know what to do at the end of all these episodes. That's it for this installment of the Full Force Redacted. Thank you to my wonderful guest, Brian Flynn. After 3, you know what to do. 1, 2, 3. Full Force.
Full Force. Full Force. Full Force. Exactly.
Done.
There you go.
Access granted.
Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always you can keep up with the show after listening by following on X, formerly Twitter, @TheFullForce, liking the Facebook page, facebook.com/TheFullForce. We've also added a brand new Instagram, so check us out there as well @The Full Force Podcast, and if you would like to contact the show you can message us on any of those platforms with feedback and questions. We also have a Patreon page, so if you want to show your support for the show, see your name up in lights on these videos, or enjoy exclusive bonus content, then check out patreon.com/The Full Force Podcast, or click on the link on any of the posts this podcast appears in. Full Force.
Access granted.